deep need there is to take pressure off myself. From a very, young age, I felt like I had a ton to accomplish and not enough time to do it. And so there's this constant pressure. No one else is putting this on me. I don't have an editor yet for my book who's telling me what my deadline is, or a producer behind this podcast telling me when we need to get episodes out. But I just have this constant pressure. And sometimes I just need to let that go. I just need a break. Just like, you need that alone time and you want to stay up a little bit later. I just need to disassociate and take the pressure off myself. Another problem, or a need that I'm trying to meet is emotional safety. We talked about failure last season. And we had a couple of episodes on it actually. But if you have this perfectionist mindset and your actions are tied to a fear of failure, then if you think you're going to fail in a podcast, in writing a book, or whatever it is that you keep pushing out these deadlines and not keeping promises to yourself, that may be the reason why, is that you're trying to keep yourself safe from failing, because failing can be scary.
100% it's scary. So talk to me a little bit more about, why, and maybe we don't know why, but why do you think that if you have an appointment with someone, you're more likely going to be on time and keep that promise because you don't want to let them down. You don't want to cancel on them. Yet we cancel on ourselves all the time. We let ourselves down all the time, even if we time block it, put it in the calendar like 6 a.m., go to the gym, and then you don't. Like, why do we do that? Why is it that we don't cancel on other people, but we cancel on ourselves?
Yeah, I think there's a few things behind that. One, the accountability, right? When there is someone else who is depending on you, it's a boss, a spouse, a doctor. You've made this appointment, you got to be there on time. So you feel this accountability to them and this responsibility to show up and to not let these people down. Also, in society, I feel like there's this huge pressure for not letting other people down. You go to school on time, you go to work on time, you show up for your spouse, for your kids. I don't think there's a lot of education or nurturing when it comes to being accountable to yourself. And if you're an older sibling like I am, I often believed that my needs come second. So this could be the way that you were born. Maybe it's a natural uh, part of your personality, or maybe it's something that was kind of nurtured into you. If you had a upbringing like we did, where I felt like women were encouraged to serve the men, the older siblings were encouraged to serve the children. And if you don't have good emotional boundaries and save some of that energy for yourself, then you're going to show up for everybody else and you're going to give your little pie of energy. You're going to give 10% here and 9% here and 10% here and 25% here. And by the time you have time to show up for yourself, you're exhausted and beat. So I think that's one of over few reasons why we don't show up for ourselves and why we keep breaking promises to ourselves.
I agree. I also think what I'm hearing, what you were saying before is that there are consequences when there are other people involved. Like if you don't show up to work on time, you could get fired. These are like real world consequences. Or if you don't keep a promise to your spouse, it could lead to divorce. If you don't pick up your kids on time, they could get snatched. I don't know. There are real consequences when other people are involved. And so something that came to my mind as you were talking is, what if the consequence is your future self not being in the place you want it to be? Or, think about in 10 years from now, will this older version of Britannia look back and say, why did you let me down? Like, I've been waiting for you to do this and you're not doing it. And so what if we could look at ourselves, keeping ourselves accountable, but involving our future selves so it feels like another person?
Welcome to the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast, where you master your mind and coach your own comeback. You are the hero, you are the guide, and you will learn to architect your life from the inside. I'm your host, Britannia Stowe, joined by my sister and co host, Anike Wilder. Enjoy the show. With the new year just a month away, we know New Year's resolutions are on your mind, but maybe there's something else on your mind, something real, like a bad habit. It's human to keep the secret, to hide or to justify. Sometimes we even continue a bad habit knowing what it cost us: energy, clarity, connection, our future goals. Today, that's what we're talking about. So, Annika, bad habits. Let's talk about them. We know, we've talked about this, that bad habits are basically these mini addictions. And I think that a lot of people get confused on what a bad habit is. And so I'd love to just start by what are some bad habits we can throw out there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's the obvious ones, right? Like people might have a habit of drinking or smoking or chewing, right? This is like the one that people talk about, like, oh, I've got this addiction or I've got this habit. But then there's things that people don't even realize, like overeating or social media is super addicting. There's like, what about just sitting too much or not going to bed on time? Like, I have that bad habit of not having a very good nightly routine, or even just not keeping promises to yourself. And this is also something that I talk to Dan, my husband. He introduced this idea that women have mental and emotional addictions, and that men have physical addictions. And it doesn't mean that they can't have one, like one can't have a physical addiction and the other can't have an emotional addiction. But if you were to stereotype, men are more likely to be addicted to substances, pornography, the drinking, the smoking, things like that, physical stuff, working out, working. These are all like physical things they do with their body. Whereas women might be addicted to like gossiping or self-defeat or, um, spiraling thoughts or victim mentality. He says those are like habits that also turn into little addictions. And so that's, I wanted to like kind of throw that out there because I never had thought about it before he brought it up. I was like, oh, you could be addicted to gossiping or drama or victim mentality. So these are all types of habits that all go into the bad habit category.
Well, gossiping is an interesting one because it's socially acceptable. What's that term? Spill the tea. Tell me
Hmm.
all the things.
Hmm.
And I enjoy hearing a little bit of drama because it makes me feel better about my life. But if it consumes me, if I am constantly seeking out gossip and then sharing gossip about other people, that is a bad habit. I find it interesting that men tend to have more of the physical bad habits. I think that I have some masculine traits, so I know that I have struggled with some of these in the past. I took a pain pills for a long time, and I always said it was more of a dependence because I actually had chronic back pain. But it was an addiction and it was a bad habit of going towards a pill instead of exercising, stretching, strengthening my body. So even though that men may lean more towards these physical habits, women can have them too.
Oh, 100%. Like, and it's just one way to kind of categorize it to simplify things. But of course, a man can have an emotional addiction or mental addiction, and women can have physical. Absolutely. And there's a bad habit that I have right now that I thought I fixed and then I reintroduced again. And this bad habit is uh, being on my phone right before I go to sleep. So when I thought I fixed it, I would plug my phone in a totally different room and I would put it on airplane mode at 9 o'clock. And then I would have a whole hour getting ready for bed and not be on my phone because it's actually really bad to look at a screen before bed. It messes up with your circadian rhythm and it's not good. It's very addicting. And then my kids wanted the alarm clock that I've been using. So I gave them the alarm clock and I didn't have one. So then I used my phone as an alarm clock, which is by my bed so I can hear it. And so now I'm back on this bad habit of looking at my phone literally right before I close my eyes and go to sleep. And I know I'm not the only one who has this, but this is a current bad habit that I want to kick.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because I also have a bad habit that I want to kick. I mentioned, pain pills. I also used to be a binge eater. A lot of people don't know that about me because I'm pretty lean, at least before I had my baby. But I was a binge eater and I would keep food literally under my bed because I would wake up and want to eat because I no longer felt full. And so I would chase this like fullness. But the bad habit that I've been struggling with now is not keeping promises to myself. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think that some people don't even realize that that could be a bad habit. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast overall, not just this episode, was to help me keep promises to myself, to get this information out there, to help people, and to write my book.
I think that's great. So, should we troubleshoot it a little bit with one another, like what these bad habits are actually serving, and maybe talk about some other habits and what that need or why that people do it and what it's helping with?
Yes, right. Because we could sit here and list all the bad habits, but what is it serving? And we
Yeah.
keep these bad habits for a reason. It's serving some part of us. When I was binge eating, it wasn't because I was hungry. I was overeating because I had this need for comfort and for control. And so that's the underlining need or concern that's being addressed when you overeat. With social media, it is kind of bipolar because it can either be a true escape, I don't want to deal with my life or my reality, or it is the need for connection. Lying used to be a habit that I struggled with a little bit in my 20s, and that is the need for acceptance and safety. Who knew that by lying, I was seeking acceptance and safety?
Yeah, I know it's totally true. And it's something that I talk about all the time because I hate lying, but I also understand why people lie. So if, you take a couple that, I've been coaching in the past and they say, well, I don't want to tell my wife this because every time I bring up this issue, she gets upset and she judges me and it turns into an argument. So I just don't tell her when I do this thing. And then the wife says, I just want him to be honest. I want him to tell me the truth. I want him to tell me how he's feeling. And he goes, okay, I'll tell you. And then he says it and then she judges him. So then he goes right back into that safety of, I don't, that's a scary thing. She's going to punish me for being honest. So I'm not going to tell her. I'm going to lie for my own safety. So it's 100% true. As much as I hate lying, it is what we do all the time.
Well, and it's funny because I had an opportunity where I could have lied with my husband recently because, yeah, I didn't want to feel judged or I didn't want the conversation to go down a path. And I know how he's going to react. And it was over something so silly. We were invited to a birthday party, and the day of, not the day before, not the week before, the day of, I decide to tell him that it's 90s themed and we need to dress up. I knew a month ago that it was a 90s theme. And I didn't want to bring it up because he doesn't love to dress up. And I didn't want to get that pushback of, oh, another party, another social event. And now you're going to make me dress up. So it's just putting it off and putting it off, which is another bad habit. One of the reasons why we put things off is again that lack, we're seeking safety and we're wanting to not be judged. And so the underlining problem there was that I was refusing to bring up this conversation. And he said, why are you just now telling me? And I could have so easily said that I just found out. And he would never know. But that's wrong. That's lying. And I knew that it's better to be honest. And so I said, honestly, I didn't want your pushback. I didn't want this bad attitude about dressing up. So I put it off as long as possible. Here it is the day of. We're not going to buy anything. We're just going to go in our closet. And if we have something, great. If we don't, that's fine. And he just like looked at me like, okay, it would have been nice to know. But my honesty is actually what helped the day go smooth and the conversation not end on this intense note. And so I encourage people, if you are struggling with lying, I know that you're seeking non-judgment, but if you are honest, that is the gateway to connection.
And it's also your delivery too. Like you could have been like, "Well, I didn't want you to freak out," or what. You just were like, "Well, honestly, this is how I felt." And you were being like vulnerable, which is what we talked about last time, and you were being honest, and that delivery already softens the blow of like feeling like he was keeping something from you, but now you can come from a place of honesty and vulnerability, and it helped it land a lot better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Some others that we had mentioned, like sitting too long. We sit too long usually because there's a lack of energy or lack of motivation. You have been on Zoom meetings all day, you've been working all day, and what do? You grab your phone or sift through emails and you just sit and sit and sit because you don't have the energy to do anything else. So there's that underlying need. Annika, you mentioned no sleep routine. I'm curious, what do you think the underlying need is there?
I think it started when I had my first child, Anders, where I wanted conscious awake time. And everyone says you need to sleep when your baby sleeps, but like his sleeping was so out of whack that it was hard to actually be rested and go to sleep when he went to sleep. But I got in this really bad habit at that time of staying up when he went to sleep so that I can have alone time because I just wanted to feel alone because it's constantly like mom time. Like every waking hour, you're with your baby. And so I would put him down when I knew he would have some kind of stretch, and maybe it was only 2 hours when I could have been sleeping, but instead I wanted to watch a show or I wanted to, I don't know, cut my own hair, like whatever it is. I wanted that conscious awake time to myself. So I kind of think the no sleep routine is one of two things, and it's the need for alone time, that's that stillness, because maybe everybody else has gone to bed and you just want to be alone for a little while. So you're kind of pushing against the clock, and then you get out of the routine, and then you're not creating bad or good habits. Or it's also just a habit of rebellion, like no one can tell me what time I need to go to bed, which I know is something like that you do, Brittany. You're always rebellious. Like if someone says, "Okay, Brittany, you need to be at bed at 10," you can be like, "I'm going to go to bed when I want," or "I'm going to be at bed at 10:13." Like you're going to push back even against yourself because you might have a need to rebel. And maybe that came from a place of having too many restrictions in childhood, whether you grew up in a strict household from your parents, church environment, whatever it is. It could be school, like private school, like any kind of restrictions can cause someone to then be rebellious if they don't understand the true meaning and purpose behind those restrictions and rules, and they're not bought into it. They're going to want to naturally rebel. So then that creates a bad habit. I mean, this is a lot deeper, like subconscious stuff. But then when it comes to something as simple as I need to go to bed at 10, your subconscious is going to push back and say, no, I don't need to go to bed at 10. I can go to bed whenever I want and still be fine and still get up in the morning, even if I only get 4 hours of sleep. And you think you're some kind of superhuman, which is not true.
I will say, life hack here though, if you are the rebellious type, like Annika called me out, I definitely am. If your bedtime is 10 p.m., you can still rebel and go to bed at 9. It doesn't have to be later. There is nothing wrong with rebelling and going to bed a little early.
That's so funny. Never thought about it like that. That's a good perception shift. So, and then let's talk about yours, Brittanya, like not keeping promises with yourself. Tell me more about that and how we can combat that.
Yeah, the deep need there is to take pressure off myself. From a very, young age, I felt like I had a ton to accomplish and not enough time to do it. And so there's this constant pressure. No one else is putting this on me. I don't have an editor yet for my book who's telling me what my deadline is, or a producer behind this podcast telling me when we need to get episodes out. But I just have this constant pressure. And sometimes I just need to let that go. I just need a break. Just like, you need that alone time and you want to stay up a little bit later. I just need to disassociate and take the pressure off myself. Another problem, or a need that I'm trying to meet is emotional safety. We talked about failure last season. And we had a couple of episodes on it actually. But if you have this perfectionist mindset and your actions are tied to a fear of failure, then if you think you're going to fail in a podcast, in writing a book, or whatever it is that you keep pushing out these deadlines and not keeping promises to yourself, that may be the reason why is that you're trying to keep yourself safe from failing because failing can be scary.
100% it's scary. So talk to me a little bit more about, why, and maybe we don't know why, but why do you think that if you have an appointment with someone, you're more likely going to be on time and keep that promise because you don't want to let them down. You don't want to cancel on them. Yet we cancel on ourselves all the time. We let ourselves down all the time, even if we time block it. Put it in the calendar like 6 a.m., go to the gym, and then you don't. Like, why do we do that? Why is it that we don't cancel on other people, but we cancel on ourselves?
Yeah, I think there's a few things behind that. One, the accountability, right? When there is someone else who is depending on you, it's a boss, a spouse, a doctor. You've made this appointment, you got to be there on time. So you feel this accountability to them and this responsibility to show up and to not let these people down. Also, in society, I feel like there's this huge pressure for not letting other people down. You go to school on time, you go to work on time, you show up for your spouse, for your kids. I don't think there's a lot of education or nurturing when it comes to being accountable to yourself. And if you're an older sibling like I am, I often believed that my needs come second. So this could be the way that you were born. Maybe it's a natural uh, part of your personality, or maybe it's something that was kind of nurtured into you. If you had a upbringing like we did, where I felt like women were encouraged to serve the men, the older siblings were encouraged to serve the children. And if you don't have good emotional boundaries and save some of that energy for yourself, then you're going to show up for everybody else and you're going to give your little pie of energy. You're going to give 10% here and 9% here and 10% here and 25% here. And by the time you have time to show up for yourself, you're exhausted and beat. So I think that's one of or a few reasons why we don't show up for ourselves and why we keep breaking promises to ourselves.
I agree. I also think what I'm hearing, what you were saying before is that there are consequences when there are other people involved. Like if you don't show up to work on time, you could get fired. These are like real world consequences. Or if you don't keep a promise to your spouse, it could lead to divorce. If you don't pick up your kids on time, they could get snatched. I don't know. There are real consequences when other people are involved. And so something that came to my mind as you were talking is what if the consequence is your future self not being in the place you want it to be? Or, think about in 10 years from now, will this older version of Britannia look back and say, why did you let me down? Like I've been waiting for you to do this and you're not doing it. And so what if we could look at ourselves, keeping ourselves accountable, but involving our future selves so it feels like another person?
Yes, well, and I love this. This is a practice that I often have. Not only do I often talk to my younger self and give her comfort, but I talk to my older self as well because she's accomplished everything. She's more wise. And don't want to let her down. And so, absolutely, having these avatars of your future self and actually visualizing them, talking to them, having conversations with them will help you realize there are consequences if you don't keep promises to yourself, just like there's consequences with everybody else.
Exactly. So these bad habits really are just like placeholders for emotional vacancies, right?
Mhm.
So, like comfort, control, distraction or escape, connection, solace. And so, what do we do about this? Like, how do we actually get to the point where we are filling those needs or changing those bad habits?
Yeah. So, I want to remind you that it's not always your fault when you have these bad habits. Sometimes it starts small, like you talk about putting your phone back in your room and you thought you beat the habit, right? Facing it head on. And if we're defending it, like if you said, well, listen, my kids took my alarm, so what else am I supposed to do? Right. So first you got to face it head on and be aware. And we're going to have to do a whole episode about being self-aware. But be aware that you are choosing. Even if it's become this habit, there is a choice behind it. So you can now take a choice to do something about it, but you don't have to do it alone. There are so many great experts out there who have kind of hacked the system for you. And we're going to share some tidbits on how you can break through some of these habits and fulfill these emotional vacancies in a healthier way. So, one of them is James Clear, the author of Habit Stacking. He says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So, it's not your fault necessarily. You just don't have the systems in place. So, by habit stacking, and this is by putting a new or a better habit on top of something you already do. So, stacking your habits, you can actually break a bad habit. One of my, favorite things to do when I was trying to gain more self-worth in myself and build up my self-esteem is every time I brush my teeth, because you should be brushing your teeth for at least 2 minutes, I would say these three affirmations in my head. And then when I was done brushing my teeth, I would say them out loud. And it just became this easier part of the habit. So just grabbing my toothbrush, I'll be like, I am capable. I am lovable. I am, fierce. I am strong. Just by reaching for my toothbrush, I've been able to, these unconscious thoughts start to kick in because I stacked those habits. Another great way to break down a habit, say you scroll all the time. I love social media too. We use social media for our businesses. Sometimes you need to be on social media, but it's easy to be on there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and actually be taking in content instead of creating content, right? You're consuming instead of creating. And so, one of the things you can do is set a timer and do 5 push-ups. So not only are you combating the scrolling, but you can go, okay, for every hour that I am on social media, I'm going to do 5 push-ups. And that will help me with my physical health and release dopamine, which will help with the feeling of self-worth and some of the things that we seek when we have these bad habits. Annika, when a call ends and you're maybe, I don't know, you've been sitting all the time and you've been on all these meetings, what's maybe something that you could do that would break up that sitting bad habit?
Yeah, and it's hard because when you're in the zone, I'm a big proponent of staying in the zone. Like I don't, if you get interrupted, it takes like 15, 20 minutes to get back in that zone. And so this really has to be intentional and it has to be planned out. So for me, it would be something like, say I have to call 50 people, then I'm going to call 10 without being interrupted, without taking breaks, and completely focused on 10. And as soon as I do 10, then I'm going to go walk outside and get some sunshine or have a little treat for myself or go talk to a friend down the hallway and then get back in and do 10 more. Or maybe it's 50 at a time because you want to knock it all out. But then, like, what's your reward afterwards? What are you looking forward to? It doesn't always have to be a consequence. Like, if I don't do this, this will suffer. It can be, if I do this, I get this. And
Hmm.
that is one way to also get you out of the habit of just sitting all the time is a reward. You did the hard work by sitting and doing the calls or whatever you need to do on the computer, and now what is your reward? And maybe that's getting up, getting some exercise, and rewarding your body for the work that you just did.
Yes. And so habit stacking is really taking a habit that's not necessarily a bad habit. It could be a very good habit and stacking your new habit on top of it. But what if you have these bad habits that you actually just want to get rid of? You don't want to just add. So could we focus on replacing some of these? So maybe instead of scrolling and doing 5 push-ups, instead of scrolling to disconnect from your day, maybe you stretch. Maybe you take 20 minutes to sit on the ground and do some stretches. That would also help with the sitting all the time, right? So instead of sitting after a long meeting and just kind of disconnecting, you can get up, you can change locations, you can do some stretches, get your body moving. What about, overeating or sleeping or not having a sleep schedule? What are some ways that we can focus on replacing?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with finding out the deeper meaning of it. So look at the habit, like what we talked about. What need are you fulfilling by doing that bad habit? So if you're overeating, is it because the deeper need is you want more comfort, you want to feel fulfilled, so you want to fill your body, kind of like what you were saying, and find out what that meaning is and see what other items can also give you that same emotion or that same feeling. So maybe if you want to be fulfilled, maybe serve your community. Maybe it's not you needing more food, maybe your community needs more food. And then you might subsequently also be more full after doing service of some kind. Now, obviously, you can't do this every day when you're, in your home at 10 o'clock at night. You can't just go drive out, but maybe it's sending a text to somebody and filling their day with words of affirmation or calling someone who's having a hard time. Think about like really what is the need here, not just the habit and changing habit for habit. I think it always gets down to that deeper meaning.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And that's why it's important to know what those voids are, those emotional vacancies are. So for not keeping promises to yourself, and that's, taking the pressure off or emotional safety. For me, the biggest thing is actually doing micro promises. So instead of having this big, huge promise of, I'm going to have my book published by December 2025, which is so daunting. And I'm not going to finish it. It's a month from now, and I'm not that close. But maybe I can have a micro promise, which is I am going to write a chapter by December 25th. That's one chapter, no big deal. I can do that. And
Hmm.
maybe I do a micro promise on top of that, which is I'm going to write one sentence every day. I'm going to write for 1 minute every day. Maybe I need to also break it down further. Be like, what? Maybe today I'm just going to think about what I'm going to write about later today. And just start. How can we start these micro movements to get us closer and to break down, that elephant? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's the same with these huge goals that we have. I'm curious, Annika, what are some other micro changes that can help people get closer to creating new goals or breaking bad habits?
Yeah, so for one, like we all wake up during the day. We all have something we got to do, whether you're a stay-at-home mom and you need to do mom duties, or you're going to work, or you're going to serve the community, you're a politician, whatever it is, like we all wake up. The sun comes up every single day on repeat. So a micro change would be, okay, say I set my alarm clock for 7:30 every morning and I have a goal to wake up earlier, but 6 a.m. seems way too early. From 7:30 to 6 a.m., that's too daunting. So then I just procrastinate and I just don't do it because it's too big. So the micro change would be waking up at 7:25 or 7:20, like just a few minutes before, and then the next day maybe do a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier. But you're going to wake up anyway, but the micro change can help shift it into reaching the bigger goal. Or maybe if you want to not eat so much, like for me, I like to, well, I actually didn't used to do this. This is something that was new because my husband does this, but eat ice cream directly out of the carton. And if you do that, you will eat the whole carton.
Doesn't matter how big. We're not just
No.
talking a pint here.
Yeah, especially me who likes to finish things. I'm like, it's hard for me to stop. And so instead, still eat the ice cream, have a treat. I don't care, but put it in a bowl and then put it in a cup and don't go get more. Like give yourself like the permission to have the treat, but you don't have to eat it out of the carton. So the habit actually hasn't changed. You haven't stopped eating ice cream, but you have created a smaller amount by putting a boundary around it.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually love to eat ice cream out of mugs. And I don't know if it had to do with wanting to eat less or if I just like to eat ice cream out of a mug. But because I have that habit, I eat significantly less ice cream.
And I think it tastes better. But another one also is like the gym. I have these spurts where I go to the gym every day for like 3 months, and then it only takes like 3 days to get out of the habit, and then I'm out of the habit, right? So now I'm back to square one, and it's just get up and just put on your gym clothes. I'm not going to commit to go to the gym. That's too hard. I don't have time. But right now, I'm going to get up because I get up anyway. I'm going to habit stack. And right after I get up, I'm going to do my other habits, which is go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, do a mouthwash, and then put my gym clothes on. And then if that means like maybe I just in my gym clothes for 5 minutes and then I go shower and do the rest of my other habits for the day. But at least I'm starting to get in the habit of going to the gym, even though it's just a very micro change.
Oh, yeah. I was the same way with working out, Annika. I remember working all day and then trying to go to the gym in the evening, and I was exhausted and I didn't have the energy for it. So I knew that if I wanted to work out in the morning, I was going to have to change this habit. And I would start by, okay, I'm going to just set my alarm for an earlier time. And I would set my alarm for, say, it was 5 a.m. instead of like 7. And I would go, okay. And I'd turn my alarm off and I'd go back to bed. And I did that for a week. I did that for a week where I just allowed myself to wake up, turn off, and go back to bed. Then for the next week, I said, okay, we're going to get up and we're going to put on our workout clothes, but we're not going to leave the house. So 5 a.m. would happen, and I knew all I had to do was put on my clothes and I can go back to bed. So I'd quickly put on my clothes and climb right back to bed. And I did that for a week. And then I said, okay, now all you have to do is wake up, put on your clothes, and drive to the gym. But girl, you do not have to go in. So that's what I did. I would wake up at 5 a.m., rush and put my clothes on, drive to the gym, literally sit in my car for 5 minutes and turn around and go home. After doing that for a few days, I was like, well, I might as well go inside. And so I did. And I had this rule of like, you only have to walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes and these small increments. And eventually I became a person who worked out every day and in the morning. And it was so easy to do it because I did these micro changes, just like you said. And you know that starting at ground zero, starting all over again, that you can do it by just creating these small changes in your daily habits.
It's just something I do also with like things that need to get done that you don't want to do, like doing the dishes. And I'll kind of pep talk myself. I'm like, oh, I hate loading the dishwasher. And which is so funny because we have all these modern conveniences that make it so easy. You don't have to hand wash anymore. But I'm still like, oh, like there's so many dishes. I have to put it in the dishwasher. And so I'll tell myself, just go put the cups in the dishwasher because that's like the easiest thing. You just dump out the liquid, put it in
Mhm.
if there's liquid in it, right? So I tell myself just do the cups, and then I put all the cups in, and then I'm already like my sleeves are already rolled up. I'm already like in the zone. I'm like, okay, now just go do the plates. Then I go do the plates. Okay, now is there any forks around here? Okay, I'm just gonna do the forks. And next thing I know it, I've done the entire dishwasher, and you know how long it took? Like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
We procrastinate and we throw a fit over things that take like 4 minutes to do,
Let
but
me
it's our mind.
let me ask you, do you have a certain a dish or utensil you don't like to put in the dishwasher?
Well, yeah, like steak knives, pots, pans, things like that.
So, that's where I'll get hung up. It's like I can load the dishwasher, but I can rationalize the steak knives and the pots and pans sitting in the sink because they take just a little bit more time. But you're right. How long does it take to wash a pot? How long does it take to wash a steak knife? For me, being rebellious, and I don't know if it's because I'm an Aquarius or I'm a second born. I don't know where the rebelliousness comes from, but I know that I am. but I can use this to my advantage. And so, what I do when I don't want to do the dishwasher is I go, girl, you do not need to do the dishwasher. Your husband is more than capable in loading and unloading the dishwasher when he gets home. And I will tell myself, don't touch the dishes. Don't even look at the dishwasher. I will literally 30 seconds later be loading the dishwasher or unloading it just because I told myself I didn't have to do it. I was like, well, I'm going to do it. I can't tell myself what to do.
You're such a conundrum, but it's true. It's all a mental game. It's all just like the thoughts in our mind. And so I have started anything that I'm grudgingly doing, I have started gamifying it because I think in a world of overstimulation where just everything is like taking our attention, stimulating us, entertaining us, creating dopamine effects, it's like this need. It's kind of scary that our society's kind of evolving that way, but I will lean into a little bit and say, like, gamify it. So I have timed myself. We have a really big timer on our refrigerator for our kids because we time them and we tell them, okay, clean up for this long. And so I use it too. So for when they're in bed and I think, okay, I need to do the dishwasher, I want to see how fast I can do it. I'm going to put the timer on for 5 minutes. I can do anything for 5 minutes, and let's see how much I can get done in 5 minutes. And then I'm like super speed and I get almost everything done in 5 minutes because I want to beat the clock. So you can gamify it, you can time yourself. And then the most important thing is give rewards for those small things. Like, oh, see, I can load the dishwasher. This wasn't hard. And remind yourself, like, you're writing a chapter in your book. See, I am an author, and reinforce it with the words. If you, you think you can't stop eating ice cream, but you ate a smaller portion, you say, see, I can cut back. That's something that I repeat to myself all the time. See, you can. And that reinforces over and over and over because you are what you think, you are what you feel. And if you're constantly saying, I can't, I won't, I don't know how, then that will become your reality. But if you're reinforcing it with, yes, I can, because I just did, I just loaded a cup, I can load a second cup, and you're telling yourself, then it will get better and better, easier and easier. And it actually becomes a belief, which then creates better habits as well.
Well, and I love that you brought this up, this celebration, because we skip this part, right? All the time. We forget the celebration. All of a sudden we've accomplished a goal and we're like, okay, what's the next goal? The
Right.
celebration is such a huge part and it does release those good feeling hormones, your dopamine and your serotonin. And so allowing yourself to celebrate even the little things, even the things that you don't like to do, will help you release those good feeling neurotransmitters. And then you'll be able to do it next time, maybe faster. Maybe you'll even enjoy, maybe you'll trick yourself into enjoying loading the dishwasher, which I have to say, when I'm in the zone washing dishes, I can actually find it quite meditative just sitting there washing dishes, like allowing myself to be at a slow pace. So even the things that you kind of refuse to do or are having a hard time start doing, not only can you create these habits, but you might find peace once you are in it and you've created the habit. So as we go, go through our day and our lives, and we're trying to make these changes, there are some questions that you're going to want to ask yourself. We had lots of, self-coaching throughout the podcast today, but there are some questions that you're going to want to ask yourself. And this might seem very primary and fundamental, but creating change is. So start with, what habit is it that I want to break? Just call it out, right? You can't change anything that you're defending. So first call out what it is that you're trying to change. For me, it's breaking promises with myself. And then call out the emotional need that you're trying to fill. And it's to take the pressure off and it's for emotional safety. Then ask yourself, when do I normally do this? When do I normally break promises to myself? And for me, it's when I'm tired. It's the end of the day. It's when I don't have energy. So, what's one thing I can do to flip that on its head? Well, I could start making promises that I have in the morning. When I do have energy, before I show up for everyone else, I can start showing up for myself. Annika, I'm curious, what other questions should our listeners be asking themselves as they're starting to lay out which habit they want to break?
Yeah, I think the first three are super important, but then what will you gain by letting go of that bad habit? What's the benefit of it? What's the motivation for quitting in the first place, right? And then what's a new habit that could meet that need, but in a healthier way? So these are both good questions that are very thought-provoking, and I would challenge anyone to like write them down because it's very easy to change just our thoughts alone. So as we're asking these questions, write them down, write the answer, and then study them out in your mind. Don't just fight with your own thoughts. It's very easy to have a fleeting thought, especially when the habit is so much ingrained in us.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And make it more accessible. Remind yourself, keep yourself accountable. So ask yourself, how can I, make it more possible that I meet this goal or I break this bad habit? Maybe it is having an accountability partner. Maybe it's putting reminders up. Maybe it's not just putting a reminder in your phone, but if it's not overeating, put a sticky note on the bag of chips. Or maybe don't buy bag of chips and instead buy, dried fruit or nuts and then put a sticky note on the dried nuts that say, you can do it. You're doing a great job, right? Allowing yourself to celebrate and to double down with some positive affirmations and motivation. And you could always create a mantra that you say every day in your mind while you're brushing your teeth and even out loud. I challenge everyone. I know it's, a month away from the new year, and a lot of people are looking to create real change. Start with some micro changes, right? Maybe you want to break a habit for the rest of your life, but that pressure is too much. So maybe let's just do a challenge for 7 days. Annika, I'm going to encourage us to do this challenge with our listeners to create a new habit or to break a old habit. Let's do a 7 days challenge where we are intentional and maybe it's creating those micro changes, maybe it's replacing, but every day for the next 7 days, we're going to be intentional about that. For you, what would it be for your sleep? Having a better sleep routine, not putting your phone by your bed? What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's a big one for me. Waking up on time or actually waking up when my alarm goes off. Like today, it went off at 7:30 and I slept for another hour instead of getting up. When I could have gotten up, I went to bed at 11:30. Like that was 8 hours, but I didn't want to. And so, yeah, so it has to do with sleep. So, going to bed on time without my phone. So, like an hour of screen-free time before bed. So, turning off my phone an hour before, and then actually getting out of bed when I set a goal to get out of bed at a certain time. That's what I'll be working on.
I love that. And I'll be working on keeping promises to myself, which includes holding space to work on my book, even if that means I'm not going to finish a whole chapter. In the course of a week, I will be writing a little bit every day, even if it's just one sentence. And I will be writing in the morning because normally I get too exhausted and I don't have time at the end of the day. So I will be prioritizing myself even though it's the holidays, even though I have other deadlines, I know that I can make these small changes. And in a week, we're going to be recording another episode. So maybe we can check in to see how we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. And for all those that are listening, and myself included, your brain is telling you, this is hard. This is unfamiliar. I don't want to do it. This is going to be so hard. But Britannia, when you're running a race, 'cause you used to run races, right? How do you feel like, say you're running, we'll just say a 5K, we'll make it, easier. If you run the 5K at a slow pace, you're not trying very hard. You're just like, oh, I'm just gonna like kind of walk along, just be on my phone. I'm not gonna push myself, but I'll get done when I get done. How do you feel when you're done with the race?
I don't feel as accomplished. I mean, I still did it, but I don't feel like I pushed myself. I don't feel like I challenged myself, and I crave a challenge. I like to push myself to my limits. So it's not as enjoyable to me.
Right. So now imagine yourself like, okay, I've been training for this and it's hard and my body hurts and it sucks. And I am going to push my hardest on this 5K. Maybe I want to place in my age or whatever. And you work so hard and maybe you don't even place. You don't get the time you want, but you knew you did your best. How do you feel now?
I feel on top of the world. I feel like I'm wearing a blue ribbon or holding a trophy because I did my best. And I've noticed that my feeling accomplished isn't tied to the outcome necessarily. It's tied to the level of effort I put in.
Exactly. So even though this is hard and your brain is telling you, I don't want to do it, and this is different, and your brain's going to protect you and prevent you from making any changes because it's unfamiliar, remember the feeling of how good you will feel when you do something hard and what happens at the end when you go, wow, I just did a hard thing. And you're going to feel good. You're going to get some dopamine. It's going to feel way better than falling back into the same old habits, doing it half-assed or whatever. If you actually put yourself into it, put work into it, just remember that feeling afterwards, and it's so worth that feeling.
Annika, that's such a good reminder. Please, everyone, remember quitting is not just about stopping, it's about starting something even better. This has been another episode of the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share the love. And remember the teachings of Lao Tzu. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Until next time, trust yourself, take the wisdom, take the breath, and take the next step.